Welcome to This Explainer. Pull up a chair, get comfortable, kind of like we're gathering around a campfire. Today, we're breaking down a deeply chilling narrative called The Smile Behind the Lens. We're going to look at the literal structural anatomy of a nightmare. We'll explore exactly how a story takes a totally mundane, everyday scenario, literally just a night of absolute boredom, and rapidly shifts it into a state of pure physical terror. So, have you ever felt like it was just a little too quiet? I want you to really put yourself in this exact scenario. Picture this. It's 2 a.m., you're completely alone in your room, the whole house is dead silent, you're just lying in bed, bathed in that cold blue light of your phone screen. You feel safe, right? Totally isolated in your own little digital bubble. But how safe are you really when you're completely surrounded by darkness? Part 1. The 2 a.m. selfie and the illusion of safety. Okay, let's dive into this. Our protagonist is just bored out of their mind, mindlessly scrolling through TikTok in the early hours of the morning. You know the vibe. The main lights are off, there's just a small, comforting bedside lamp casting a warm glow across the sheets. Everything feels entirely normal. But it was quiet, maybe too quiet. And as this timeline brilliantly illustrates, in just 3 minutes, the entire world flips upside down. At exactly 2 a.m., mindless scrolling, completely harmless. Then, 2:01 a.m., an innocent selfie is taken on a whim, just to send to a friend. By 2:02 a.m., a terrifying warning drops in. And at 2:03 a.m., the physical horror actually begins. In barely over 180 seconds, we go from total, relatable boredom to paralyzing panic. It's a rapid, absolutely terrifying escalation. Part 2. A shadow in the room. The anomaly appears. So the protagonist takes that random selfie, but the very second they look at the picture on their screen, boom, that visceral, physical sensation hits. You know the exact feeling, right? That sudden, icy dropping of your stomach. Because there, captured clearly in the digital image, is a tall, dark figure standing right near the bedroom door, a figure that absolutely wasn't there a second ago. Now, the immediate human reaction, of course, is to check the physical space. So they spin around instantly. And what do they find? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's literal psychological torture at this point. They frantically check behind the door, checking under the bed like a paranoid kid looking for monsters, but the room is entirely empty, perfectly silent. They even let out a nervous laugh, trying to convince themselves it was just a trick of the eye, maybe a shadow playing tricks on an overactive imagination. Who is standing behind you? Man, that single text message from the friend who received the selfie vibrates on the phone. It cuts right through the silence, and it utterly shatters any comforting delusion that this was just a shadow. The fear isn't just in their head anymore. It is externally validated. Someone else sees it too. So, the protagonist looks back at the picture, and the phone reveals what the human eye literally cannot. The entity hasn't just stayed still, it has moved. In that digital frame, the figure appears closer than before. Its face is entirely hidden in the darkness, but horrifyingly, our protagonist can clearly see these long fingers hanging loosely beside its body. The threat is actually advancing, stepping closer, but only through the digital lens of the camera. Part 3. The sensation of terror and the physicality of panic. In a wild panic, the protagonist immediately deletes the photo, but the physiological reaction has already taken hold. The breathing becomes heavy, labored. Muscles freeze right in place. It's that primal instinct taking over, reminding us of that isolating realization when every horror story you've ever brushed off suddenly feels incredibly, dangerously real. The safety of the room is just gone. And then, the environment itself begins to turn against them. The bedside lamp starts to fail. It flickers, on, off, until finally complete darkness. It's a terrifying strobe light effect that completely disorients them, plunging the room into absolute suffocating blackness. They grab their phone flashlight, frantically pointing it into the corners of the room. But still, nothing is visible. And that is exactly when the auditory horror begins. The sound of dread. Out of the pitch black, a slow, quiet scratching sound starts up. Just imagine that sound right now in your own room, like fingernails slowly dragging across wood. And the absolute most terrifying part, the sound isn't coming from the corner of the room. It's coming from directly beneath the bed, directly beneath the protagonist. Part 4, the thing under the bed. The digital mirror. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the scratching abruptly stops. Dead silence returns to the room. But then, Without the protagonist touching a single button, the phone's front camera activates completely on its own. The screen illuminates their terrified face in the dark room. Now, consider the horrifying duality of this moment. On one hand, reality, an empty, silent bedroom. If you looked around with your own bare eyes, you are alone. But on the other hand, the phone screen, the entity is there. It's standing in the room again, closer than ever. Its head is tilted unnaturally to one side, and now it is smiling. The physical safety of the empty room is entirely subverted by the inescapable digital reflection of the monster watching them. And here is exactly where the trap physically springs shut. The protagonist spins around screaming, but again, the physical room is completely empty. They try to make a run for it, but the bedroom door slams shut completely on its own. The scratching underneath the bed begins again, but it's much louder this time. Then, the entire bed frame begins to shake. The threat is no longer just confined to the digital screen. That terrifying realization finally sets in. Something alive is physically under there, shaking the very foundation they're sitting on. So we have to ask the ultimate question. What is under the bed? The protagonist slowly, fearfully looks down toward the absolute darkness beneath the bed frame. And in that black void, two pale eyes open. Part 5, the final recording, the climax and aftermath. Total chaos erupts. A hand suddenly shoots out from the darkness under the bed and violently grabs the protagonist's ankle. They let out a scream, falling backward in pure panic. In the struggle, the phone slips right out of their hand. It tumbles through the air and lands on the floor facing the bed. But the camera is still recording. And what exactly does that dropped phone lens manage to capture in the fraction of a second before the screen fades to black? A pale woman. She has hollow, completely black eyes. She is physically crawling out from the darkness underneath the bed frame, and her mouth is stretched wide into an absolutely impossible, grotesque smile. The aftermath, the very next morning, is chilling. Friends come looking for the protagonist after their calls go completely unanswered. They enter the bedroom, but the room is totally empty. The only thing they found was the phone lying on the floor, still recording. Smiling. That is the haunting final image. You see, the friends check the recording left behind on that dropped phone, and in the very final frame of that long video, the source reveals one last, truly terrifying detail. You can see the protagonist. They are standing perfectly silently in the corner of the empty room, and they are smiling. It leaves us to wonder what exactly happened in that room after the screen went black. So I leave you with this final provocative thought for today's explainer. The next time you point a camera into the dark room at night, are you absolutely sure you're alone? Thanks for joining me around the campfire today to explore this incredibly structured tale of terror. Keep learning and stay safe out there.